If you want to learn how to have a faster serve, then you may think that it's all about learning how to swing faster. Well, it is, but probably not the way you're doing right now. Most players, when they're on the court, are actually making themselves swing slower, trying to swing faster. And so I want to give you 6 tips that you can start implementing today to start increasing your speed without having to swing faster. So let's get started. The big overall concept is not about using one muscle and trying to overwork that muscle, which so many players are trying to do. They're trying to serve and overwork one muscle, getting super tight. That's the problem. I want you to think of your body like a bullwhip. If you've ever watched those Indiana Jones movies where he cracks the bullwhip, that needs to be the new concept for how you serve, because your body is the handle and the rest of your body needs to be nice and loose and relaxed to take that energy that you create with your body and send it all the way down to the racket tip to crack through the ball. And so that leads me to the first thing you have to understand if you want to start serving faster is to relax. So many players are so tense trying to serve so hard. And the funny part about it is the moment you start to relax, you actually get what you want, which is to serve faster. The more you think about serving faster as gripping the racket and swinging faster and tensing up, you actually serve slower. And so this is the key. We need to relax. And the first thing I think about relaxation is I think about your grip tension. So many times when players grab the racket, they're super tight here and they clutch the racket, and that's the wrong attitude. What you want to do is have a nice loose and relaxed racket in the sense of going from holding the racket here and feeling this nice and looseness, because the looser you are, the more your hand and your arm turns into this kind of nice loose bullwhip type action where you can send that energy through. A really quick drill you can do is simply start by holding the racket and holding it from, let's say, a gauge of 0 to 10, a 10 death grip, and then really squeeze the racket for a couple seconds and then try to release and go to like a 3 or a 2. And you'll notice the difference of 10, and then when I release, it actually releases my hand, so it's just dangling there. And that's probably a little too much if we go to a 2 or a 3. And then probably wind up around 4, where you can hold the racket, but you're not firmly clutching the racket, but the racket has room to work, okay? The head of the racket needs to work on the serve if you want to create a lot more racketed speed. So again, relaxation is the key. Start working on loosening up your grip tension so you're not so tight. The next concept I want you to start thinking about is the racket face at contact. This is so important, and it's so important because regardless of how you might hold the racket, which that's coming up next, you can still pull off getting more speed on your serve if you understand how to get the serve in. I've recently worked with so many players and they're struggling with their serve and they're going, well, I just keep serving and I just try and I just do this. And I'm saying, well, what did you do to change the racket face? And they're like, well, what's that have to do anything? And this is why this is so important. The 3 phases, the 3 understandings of a racket face I want you to start thinking about every time you serve is, am I under the ball, behind the ball, or on top of the ball? And this is the reason why. If I'm under the ball, look where the racket face is facing. It's facing slightly up, which means you missed the ball long. Now, here's the other caveat with this. It depends on how fast you're swinging. So in the beginning, a lot of players do get away with this and they hit the ball and it goes high in the air, it goes slow, and it goes in. But the problem is, as you start wanting to hit the ball harder, that same pace and you start swinging more sends the ball long, okay? So the next concept is behind the ball. In general, you will find that more balls tend to go in the box when you're behind the ball. And it's super important to start to recognize and feel these things and create these associations. And the final one is when you're on top of the ball. You're probably guessing it with the racket face going down where the ball is going to go. It's going to go probably in the net. With these 3 different understandings, guess what now? You have tools, you have means to start adjusting. Meaning that if you hit a lot of balls in the net, more than likely you're on top and you need to make an adjustment and be more behind it. If you're hitting a lot of balls, let's say long, you're probably underneath the ball and you probably want to be behind it. Now, here's the other thing. You may have trained a habit where it feels one way, but you're getting a different result. So sometimes I'll have players where literally they feel like, hey, I'm under the ball and when I'm behind it still goes long, so guess what I tell them? Adjust this way. And this is the thing. A lot of times you've trained through the years certain habits and certain feelings with those habits. And to untrain those things to learn a new habit. Sometimes you have to go, instead of one step removed, you have to go extreme to retrain it. So don't be afraid that if you're hitting a couple balls long and you go out and you do this drill and you get behind and you're like, they're still long, Kevin. Well, just go on top of it enough. The big understanding, the big tool this is learning to adjust. And the best tennis players do this. They adjust. They don't just keep hitting the ball over and over again. So the drill I want you to do is go out and serve and pay attention to what's happening. Go out and serve one ball, and if, guess what, it's too long, make the adjustment. And if it's in the net, make the adjustment. Keep making adjustments until you can refine it, until you feel exactly what it feels like to get the ball in consistently. And that's the way you're gonna learn to hit a faster serve. Because if you start speeding up your serve and you're hitting it long, but you don't make an adjustment, you're gonna get the same result, and we don't want that. The third most important thing, I think, is the grip. And it's the Continental Grip, or something very close to it. The reason why the Continental Grip is so important is for a couple reasons. It allows you to leverage your entire body much better while controlling the racket face. What it really means is that as you start swinging and leveraging by pulling the butt of the racket, when you get the racket up to contact, you can control it better with the Continental Grip. And this is me holding the Continental Grip, just showing you here. But if I have, let's say, a frying pan or like Western grip or a forehand grip, what's gonna happen is as I go up to the ball, my racket's gonna approach the ball with the racket face open, especially at high speeds. If the racket face is open just by a little bit, at high speeds, the ball's gonna go long. When you switch your grip to a Continental Grip, it makes it much easier that your racket's actually gonna approach the ball, which is with the edge of the racket, and then you use your forearm to balance it out and get the right racket face you're looking for. If you understand this, it opens up the world to your serve, because now you're able to do a lot more things, like control your racket face at high speeds compared to having the racket face approach the ball with high speeds and the racket face being open, which is gonna send the ball long. So you're probably wondering, what is the Continental Grip? How do I find it? There's two really simple ways I like to teach people to find the Continental Grip. First of all is hold the racket like a hammer and pretend this is the head of the hammer, this is the back of the hammer, and how would you hold it? You would hold it where you can pretty much push down here. If you open up your hand here and have this pad and push on this pad right here, you want to take that pad and push it behind the edge of the racket. And that way you can feel that pad pushing down. You can really control the racket face and help the racket accelerate through the ball when your pad is right lined up with that edge, just like you would if you're a hammer. Another really easy way of holding up the racket head height and just grabbing it from the side and making sure that your wrist, when it's fully extended, is nice and flat here. This is also that same exact grip. I like holding it this way because then it just gets me to where I can feel it. Another thing, if you feel like your wrist is really up, you don't have the right grip. Make sure it's flat, you're about head height. If your wrist pops up, you don't have a Continental Grip. If your wrist is way down, you don't have a Continental Grip. It should be where it's just nice and smooth, somewhere around there. The next key to having a faster serve is starting to generate power or speed, but in a new way. So many players are trying to generate speed and power by what? They muscle the ball with their arm and their shoulder, and they wonder why they have shoulder, arm, and elbow problems. What you're gonna see the pros do is do something called separation. By separating, or making it really simple, coiling and uncoiling. What coiling and uncoiling means is just I'm separating my shoulders from my hips, meaning that my hips are looking in one direction and my shoulders are looking in another direction, which you start to feel this tension inside your core. By separating, now you've coiled, which now allows big muscles, big parts of your body to uncoil and make sure that you're using big muscles to create the racketed speed you want. By separating and coiling, now your body and your core can create the power you want, or the racketed speed, by pulling the racket, and it can allow your arm to be nice and loose, which means all this separation power that you've created now gets to continue to go through the racket because your arm's loose, compared to most recreational players are going up, no separation, and then they're muscling and making everything tight, which slows the racket down. And this is why you don't want to muscle the ball. You want to start separating your body. And a really quick drill, so just focus on separation, is just standing with your feet facing forward, with your toes facing forward, and all you're going to do is hold the racket like you would serve and go through your service motion and focus on separation. This is a little extreme, but it gives you that feeling of just standing there and separating. What I'm doing is really just focusing on using my big muscles of my body to create that power on the ball. So number 5, big serves have spin on it. So many players think I want to hit a flat serve, so that means there's no spin on it. Well, that's not true. Flat serves have a little bit of spin, because the spin adds control and margin, because there's no sense in hitting a big serve that never goes in. By adding a tiny bit of spin to your serve, you get a little bit of control. And what I mean by spin is just making sure that when you swing left to right. And there's different degrees of it. I can swing left to right like this and get a lot of spin on it, because the majority of my stroke was going left to right, while penetrating through the court was very minimal. But I can also swing a lot less left to right and penetrate a lot more and get more so something like that, and the ball's going a lot harder, a lot faster, because you have to think of it as like levers or ratios, meaning that I can go left to right, and that could be, let's say, 70% of my swing, and 30% of my swing as I'm going left to right is going through the court. But then I can go 90% through the court with a little left to right, and that's going to add just enough margin so you can hit high speeds but control it. Because again, a big serve that never goes in never gets you points, and actually costs you points, because now you have to hit a second serve that your opponent knows a lot about. They know you gotta just get it in, so they can be aggressive and punish your second serve. We don't want that. We want big first serves going in the court. The last thing you want to do to create more racketed speed is make sure that you're pronating. You may already be pronating, but a lot of players get really tight and they stop the pronation. What is pronation? Pronation is just rotating your forearm so the racket can start moving faster than your hand and your arm. And so look at the difference between pronating and not pronating. This is not pronating, so I'm just gonna swing down and pull the racket down. As I pull the racket down, it's going fast. I can make the racket go fast. But notice how the head of the racket always stays behind the hand. It doesn't speed up past it. And even down here, I start to feel like I have to slow the hand down. But when I pronate and rotate this, now I do both at the same time, the racket head can start to work. It can start going faster than the hand and create even more racket head speed. And this is why pronation is so important, regardless of what type of serve you're hitting. If you're hitting a slice, a flat, or a kick, you're going to pronate, because it allows your racket to go even faster. A really quick drill to pronate is simply taking the ball and dropping it and spiking it down. Because in the process of spiking it down like this, what I have to do is pull the racket down and then get the racket head working forward. So if I just throw the ball up in the air and do like this, what's going to happen is you're going to notice way more power on the ball compared to if I just do this. Even if I do this hard, there's a lot more energy and a lot more work and force I have to put into the racket, because the head of the racket is staying at the same speed as the hand, compared to as I pronate, it starts to exponentially speed up the racket. I can go even faster by moving the hand down, getting more leverage, and now look what happens. You get an explosive amount of energy, because now you're not just moving the hand, but you're moving the hand and the head gets to go faster. And that's why pronation is so important. Now that you have all these tips together, you got to go out and work on it in the right way. Work on each one individually and slowly start putting them together. I'd work on relaxing and just making sure that I have the racket face right before I do anything. And then if I have or I don't have the grip I need, make sure you start slowly going over the grip. You don't have to jump off the boat and then just like go straight to Continental if you're not used to it. If you want to do that, that's great, but it's going to feel uncomfortable. So we want to be able to play and still practice and improve. So just start slowly moving over. Then slowly just work on your separation, and then put all these things together. You do not have to, and I don't recommend you going out and trying to put it all into one package, because your brain's gonna go, there's too many things to remember. And that's why most players don't improve. It's because they're trying to work on too many things at one time. If you take your time, you'll actually go faster in the long term. And if you go faster in the short term by trying to put it all together, you'll develop your serve much slower in the long term.